we're trying to get ready to support this new surgeon coming on board, and we're jumping around. Clinically, you're saying what you need, but if we had that proactively and understood, like they are a vendor A, this is what they use, this is what they're fellowship trained on, this is what they need, and all of a sudden we go, whoa, wait a minute, we don't have the right robot, we don't have the right supplies, we don't have the right, general surgeon coming in, they use this type of graft, whatever it is.
Clock in, scrub up, and join us behind the red line. You're listening to First Case, a perioperative podcast bringing you exciting interviews, engaging discussions, and innovative solutions that are changing the way patients receive surgical care. Each episode, we talk to frontline staff, perioperative leadership, and nursing entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the back table to the boardroom, from wheels in to wheels out, we tackle the real-life issues affecting the OR. Whether you're tuning in for surgical service education or inspiration, we're glad you're here. And now, it's time to roll back and start the first case.
Welcome back. It's time to kick off season 18, and this season is all about collaboration. We are going to be learning about the various departments that support the OR, and their support role is crucial because if even one link in that chain were to break, we wouldn't be able to operate. We're starting off the discussion by stepping into the supply chain world and speaking with Gary Skinner, the owner and partner with Discover S3 Consulting and a co-host of our sister podcast, Power Supply. We're going to see how supply chain and materials management ensures that the OR has the right products at the right time for the right patient. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Gary Skinner.
Hi, I'm Chris Blevins.
And I'm Melanie Perry.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to First Case.
Joining us now is Gary Skinner, owner and partner with Discover S3 Consulting and also the co-host of one of our sister podcasts, Power Supply, which is all about supply chain. And Gary, you have been a guest before, and honestly, your enthusiasm for supply chain and everything that goes with it really is contagious. And it's always fun and always a pleasure to get to talk to you. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Melanie, love having it. It was great. It's been like 3 years since I think we've had this discussion on the connection points of supply chain to
I think it has, yeah.
I think it's been that long. So I'm happy to be back. And I think I speak maybe a little bit better. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's just, it could bore people to death. Let's go.
I don't think you have it in you to bore people to death. So I think it's going to be a good conversation. But it really does. Having someone who is excited and passionate about a topic always makes it easier to listen to them talk about the topic. So I think we're going to win regardless. And for this season, we are looking at collaboration and we are looking outside of the OR at all of the different departments that come together to make surgery happen. I think a lot of times we really do get our blinders on and we think it's all about us and we forget that it really does take the whole hospital sometimes to make our cases happen. So in that light, as we're talking through this throughout this whole season, we're starting with supply chain because where would we be without all this stuff on ourselves? So
Correct.
As we get in the conversation, before we jump too far ahead, Gary, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody who doesn't already know who you are?
Thanks, Melanie. And not too much. A lot of humbleness and humility. Gary Skinner, partner and owner of Discover S3 with my good friend Nate Barker. We've been in supply chain consulting for, going on 5 years now. And before that, pretty lengthy time in supply chain, boots on the ground, working right next to surgery, making sure things were taken care of for mission. And before that, I was a vendor. So I spent some time in the OR and got to see behind the doors, if you will. So I think just having that triangle to understand it and really focus on what I always visit about is mission and taking care of the patient and how do we collaborate to do that. So there's a little bit, Melanie. I think we're ready to rock and roll if you are as well.
All right. Well, I think the first question really is to just think about what a lot of us think of when we think of the operating room. We're going to picture the surgeons and the blue drapes and the scrubs and the nurses and all of that. We don't think necessarily about supply chain and everything going on behind the scenes. So can you tell us just why supply chain is such a critical partner for surgical services?
Let's just break it down and not say supply chain even as a whole. Products on the shelf to take care of patients, period. Let's dumb it down. Let's start fourth grader and move it forward. It's that confidence. When the surgeon, when the nurse is in the OR and they're taking care of a patient, they need to have what they need to take care of the patient from start to finish. If things go from closed to open to the things that are needed on the shelf, they drop something, we got to have the right inventory controls and we got to have what's on the shelf. Number one, that starts with trust. We've got to have trust with the 100% who's in charge of that inventory and be very clear. So, number one is just having the right amount, inventory levels of what we need to support the patient, and then ultimately balancing the fiduciary responsibility with the C-suite to make sure we're making good choices as well.
All right. So think too, then also communication, I think, is vital. Communication going both ways, not just the OR calling to materials management or somebody and screaming about needing something, but also supply chain communicating back. Maybe when there's a back order, maybe when there is an issue with a product, or maybe there's even been a supplier change. And so our products really are the same, but the packaging is going to be different. How do we handle those communication challenges to make sure that we keep running smoothly?
It's a great question, and it's typically not by email, especially when you need those to be taken care of ASAP. Yeah, let's sit it in the 300 box of unopened emails when you're taking care of patients, right? Let me run back and check my emails. Not happening. So I think first and foremost, and one of the things that I think I learned from your guys' world was your stand-up huddles first thing in the morning. Like, what's going on? What's happening? 6:15. A lot of times, supply chain, we were invited to be a part of that. Like, what's going on? Some new product. Maybe it was a new robot. Maybe it was something that happened and we needed to make sure we were a part of it. And we understood that we were ready to help support that coming up. There's a lot of proactive approaches to this. But at the same time, if supply chain is in charge of that inventory ultimately, which I really, really hardly believe that it should be. We should be in charge of it. Nurses should be taking care of patients. Nurses shouldn't be counting inventory. We should be managing those PARs and those inventory controls to make sure you get what you need to take care of the surgeon, the patients, and what's happening in there. So the communication's huge. If something comes up and you got a back order that sometimes it's back order just hit you. They couldn't get it. Maybe OTO can't get it over the ocean. Maybe something happens from your distributor. You have to look at that sub and get it approved very quickly. So it's like, get it in your hands. You work with your vendors, which is a very huge partnership, a part of this. A lot of our vendors are in the OR and they are a absolute welcome, experienced level that needs to take care of the patient. But those back orders, for example, just use that. You have to get that in their hands. You want to touch it, feel it. How do you open it? What's it look like? How's it packaged? And you've got to have that communication up front and very quickly to move forward. So I think just that communication of, what it looks like when you have your huddles with supply chain moving forward is who needs to reach out to whom very quickly to take care of what needs from a clinical perspective. I think, running down the hall, being in the OR, being comfortable with the OR, being comfortable where you can go, where you can be a part of. Supply chain people need to be trained very well on that and versed on how to speak to that and understand the environment very, very clearly. So I think that's kind of the first step in the process.
Yeah. And I think you actually hit on something that's tangential, but makes a big difference. If supply chain, if our materials people are in the OR, if they're in our huddles, we know what they look like. And that's not always a bad thing, right? I mean, it is really good if you actually know who the person is that you're dealing with. Sure, your frontline staff aren't necessarily going to be the ones who are reaching out, ordering supplies, asking for things, but that might be your next team leader. That might be your next, director of some service line or something. And we need to have those relationships formed now. We need to know who these people are. And if your supply chain and materials management is only ever showing up in the director's office and talking to the director, nobody else knows who they are. I can actually speak for experience. I've never seen our supply chain people in our operating room. I don't know who they are anymore. Like, I don't know. And so it doesn't actually lend that degree, like you said, of trust, of knowing what's going on if we don't know who's doing it. And then suddenly I think if you don't know who's doing it, then that just leads it to maybe making it easier to just badmouth whatever is going on because you don't know the people involved. You can't see it. All you see is a shelf that maybe doesn't have what it needs. And so you don't know.
Correct.
I don't know. That's just my perspective and from what I see.
And Melanie, I think there's some best practices that has taken place, and even in my history is, we used to have supply chain people come on board and I think it's important for them to throw on a pair of scrubs or a bunny suit and have them come in and say, stand right here. This is what you're going to see if you're comfortable with it, or look through the window to understand what goes on in there and the seriousness of what is happening to take care of the patient, from anesthesia to the circulator to the first assist to the surgeon, and what that looks like. I mean, I think their eyes are going to get wider and wider and wider and go, oh my gosh, this is really what I'm supporting. And if they understand the mission and what that feels like, it makes them count a little better, makes them, we receive stuff at the dock and it gets to the doctor's hands, dock to dock. And how you unpackage it, how you keep it clean, how you get it in the sterile field, how do you get it to the floors, how do you get it to surgery to get in the doctor's hands? There are so many steps. But I think our supply chain people understanding what you do is key. And then on the flip side, we used to invite new nurses to come to one of our supply chain 101 meetings. What do we do? And then share with us. How can we be better to help support you? Maybe, Melanie, you have an idea that can make us better and continually grow. With all the changes, the new hires, the expansions, contracted labor, locums, I think it's so vital to make sure that we are having that communication and that, that webbing of inherency to come together and learn from each other, because I always think we can make it better. And that face-to-face contact is huge. It's huge.
Well, and it makes it real. Like I said earlier, and like you're saying, it actually makes it tangible. The job that I'm doing in my office, at my desk, going out on the loading dock, getting things, it's actually, I know where it's going. The example, you hear it time and time again. People I've heard before, they talk about how NASA had created this idea of everyone within the entire company. You ask them what they do. We put men on the moon. Even if you asked the janitor, what do you do at NASA? I help put men on the moon. And if you think about that and translate it to the hospital, and we're looking at the surgical services or what we're doing, we provide great patient care. We provide top-notch, high-quality patient care, and we're taking care of patients. Whether I'm unloading stuff that's been delivered that I've got to get to the OR, or whether I'm in the OR using those products on the patient, we're all providing exceptional patient care. And so I think it helps actually ingrain that into us when we get into those departments and see what's going on and see what our hard work is going toward. So that if you think about all of that and looking at, if you look at how supply chain is in a very necessary supportive role of what we do in the operating room, then we think about, maybe we can sit here and talk a little bit about purchasing and inventory, even looking at case cart preparation or our vendor relationships, those different things that supply chain really has a hand in to help us run smoothly. Maybe we'll start with purchasing. And what is the role that supply chain really has in purchasing for the operating room?
Well, balancing the fiduciary responsibility with what you need that's so approved through a value analysis of back committee, if you will. Like, first of all, is it approved? And did we get approval to move forward with this for a physician preference item that they need, right? So I think purchasing, you're going to take us down a whole nother road, and this is probably a whole nother discussion, but purchasing.
Okay, well, then we don't have to do that if you don't want to.
Purchasing is a long road, validation, audit, right product, contractual, it goes all down that side. But I think, Melanie, from a purchasing standpoint, if you're asking that specific question, is replenishment, is making sure we're getting what we need in a timely manner, like you brought up back orders before. And do we have the right inventory controls to support that purchasing power of what we need to make sure we have what you need in the case? So I think, our purchasers, our buyers, they need to be a part of this, right? Whose ownership of it is, and how do we get the dotted line to support a vendor implant that needs to be replenished on the shelf? And what does that look like? Those are high cost items, right? When you're looking at the dollars at the end of the month, where are your dollars at? There's a lot of spine. There's a lot of total joints. There's a lot of, cath lab. Those are expensive items, and we've got to be very clear on what we're purchasing to meet the expectations, but balance the financial implications of that. So from a buying perspective, there's a lot of weight on that, and it touches a lot of different people, and that's that team environment again.
No, it really does. It's a completely different podcast conversation in and of itself to look at the purchasing side, but still to realize that supply chain and our supply team members are involved in a lot of that purchasing, and they're going to be paying attention to the cost because they see all of that. Whereas, we had, for example, we were doing a case last week, and there was a particular item that they pulled, they start to use, and it's an expensive item. I know it's an expensive item. Everybody doesn't but I also know that thing costs like $800. And I'm like, that's really expensive. It's a particular dressing.
Cheap in the OR. That's cheap. I'm sorry.
Okay, cheap, but not for one dressing. It's one dressing. That's $800.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Now you're talking. Yeah.
And so we have one dressing. It's $800.
Yep.
And take it into the room. The doc doesn't exactly, it's not going to fit the wound exactly. So she starts cutting it to make it fit, except the instructions say you really shouldn't cut it or it's not going to do its thing. And then lo and behold, it doesn't work like it's supposed to because she cut it. And so then they're like, just go get another one. Just go get another one. I'm like, I'm pulling a whole other dressing off of the shelf because it wasn't used properly. And the thought of cost doesn't really come into play on the surgical side because what they care about is optimal recovery, wound healing, all of these things. And they're really just trying to get it done so they can move the patient to recovery and get them out of surgery. And that they're going to have a good experience with their surgery, wound healing, et cetera. And price doesn't always come into play. But like you said, it's a blend. We have to have the responsibility of the finances along with proper use of material so that we're doing things well, but also responsibly, right?
Sounds like an S-bar. Sounds like a great opportunity to evaluate who wasn't trained, who wasn't able to assist. And how did that get past, the committees? I mean, a lot of times, even in the back committees, the surgeon is providing what they want. They're speaking to the clinical piece and they're out of there. 5 minutes, boom. And then everybody else chimes in on what it looks like. Is it on the GPO and what's the financial implications and how much are we going to use it and what's the inventory controls downstream to make sure we need what we get. But I want to come back. I just percolated a bubble in my head. I want to talk to you about, this starts, you're talking about surgeons and surgeons need what they need to take care of the patients. And they have worked a very long time to get where they're at to ensure great outcomes. And when you and I go into surgery, we want to heal well and not be readmitted. And I think it starts at somewhere we always forget. And I don't know why. I hear bits and pieces of it, but it's like single digits. Like when we're recruiting for new surgeons, and it doesn't matter in what field, why is supply chain not brought into the forefront of recruiting when they're almost at the end of the finish line?
Yes.
We started this a long time ago and walk in and go, you know what, Dr. Perry, what do you need to do your surgery well? Yeah, you just got promoted. You're cutting tomorrow. So what do you need to be successful? Yes, we got your physician preference cards and we see that. But what microscope do you need? What's your vendor of choice? What's your secondary vendor of choice?
Yes.
What do you need for custom packs? I mean, all these bits and pieces, what is unique to you as they're recruiting this person to come in so we're ready to start them off well? I'm like, this is like, we got to have a foot at the table. And I don't know when and where, but it's at some point in time to be there to understand what they need. Because it seems like you get someone hired, here's their physician preference cards to do it. And you're like, oh my gosh, we're trying to get ready to support this new surgeon coming on board. And we're jumping around. Clinically, you're saying what you need. But if we had that proactively and understood, like they are a vendor A, this is what they use. This is what they're fellowship trained on. This is what they need. And all of a sudden we go, whoa, wait a minute. We don't have the right robot. We don't have the right supplies. We don't have the right, general surgeon coming in. They use this type of graft, whatever it is.
And it makes us look like idiots.
Yes.
And it's not us. It's not the hospital. It is simply a failure of bringing everybody to the table so that everybody can weigh in because like you said, and a good example of this, I worked with a surgeon all the way through his residency. He left, went to do his fellowship, and then he came back to our facility. And all throughout his fellowship, he had done all of his sports stuff using Arthrex. Our facility had Smith & Nephew. We didn't have Arthrex. A lot of Arthrex stuff.
Yeah.
It's not the same. And it was just a surprise when he got there that, oh, by the way, he wants Arthrex. But that was a conversation that we really should have had ahead of time, because sometimes the conversation ends with our facility uses this. So we're going to need to use this product, not the one you're used to. And that could be a deal breaker for a surgeon. Vice versa, we might be able to bring it in, but we got to know ahead of time. And so having everybody at the table to have those conversations is crucial, because as staff, we hate seeing a new surgeon come in because it's a headache. Not because we don't like the new surgeons. That's not the issue. But we don't have what we need. They get mad. Everybody gets frustrated. Everybody's irritated. The surgeon's mad.
They don't like the table. They don't like the table.
It doesn't work. This robot isn't what I wanted. This microscope is not like I asked for.
Yep.
And sometimes when we look at our recruiting the people in recruiting. I don't think it's ill-intentioned most of the time.
They just don't think about.
Well, they might not know. Promises are made that can't be kept, or assurances are given that actually aren't reality, and it's not ill-intended. It's just they didn't know. And so we also see a lot of that in scheduling too. But anyway.
100%. Think about that in OR time. Think about that in OR time. Like anesthesia, just day one. I mean, and I know there's some training that take place, but just day one, you know what they're using, and then you have this buildup in the next 30, 60, 90 days to when they're going to be approved and have credentialing and they're ready to go. Everybody's trained. Everybody's good. There's no questions. You're ready to roll proactively, not reactively.
Yeah. If everybody's at the table, we can address those concerns ahead of time and include the surgeon at the table too. Like they'll have this conversation together and have the surgeon there. So we have these conversations as a full team, because it takes everybody. It literally takes a village to make this stuff happen. So I'm going to ask you the unicorn question here. Exactly what it is that would make it perfect, right? The pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
But what does it look like when the OR and our supply teams are fully in sync?
Well, I'm probably going to shake some heads on a lot of these things, but I'm going to say what I've learned and what I've seen work well. And number one, I'm going to come back to Melanie, that supply chain needs to own the inventory. And what I mean by that is it's a trust. And you've got to build the trust. I've seen it where it wasn't. And I saw nurses repackaging and replenishing. And I'm like, that's an RN that went to work or a surgery and has been doing this, and they're stocking shelves. And not that
I hate it.
That's not what they were trained in. I mean, they took the NCLEX for a reason, right? And passed it, and taking care of patient care. Supply chain, it's to stay in our lanes, but understand the trust. So let us take supply chain, build the trust. I've even had CNOs, I've had surgery directors, I've had them walk through our warehouses, walk through our core, and point out things that they thought maybe were wrong. And a lot of times, maybe they did have some ideas, which we listened to, but getting the right inventory and part levels and supply chain all the way from dock to procuring, let us own it. Let us own it. And then, by the way, we know we have backups. We feel that stress. We feel that, our watch go up to 110 when we don't have the replenishment we need. And we're like, where do we get it? Where do we go now? We got to make sure that, and that's our stand-up huddles every morning, that we're supporting the patient. That buy-in of supply chain is also a retention strategy where you see that same person, Melanie, coming back into your point, that you learn to trust, that you retain, and you keep them because they feel like they're part of the whole plan, part of the team. So I think owning the inventory controls, and then it comes back to number one, 85% of all problems are communication. And I think that everybody is in such a different level of their supply chain. You want to say AI, or you want to say how they count, how they replenish, how they buy. Everybody's different. But if we work together on where it is at current state with clinical to supply chain and communicate effectively on what meetings that make sense, not meetings to just have meetings, but if that stand-up huddle that we had every morning in supply chain, where are we at? Do we have any issues? Do we have any subs, any back orders? Was there a ED over the weekend that blew out our supplies and we got to replenish? We got to let some doctors know or some nurses know in that world. That's the communication. And then integrating, like come into your huddle and integrating so that person, and then having that communication. You get them on speed dial and dial up and know how to get a hold of them. If you're a rural hospital and you have one OR or you have 70 ORs and you're at level 1, I mean, you've got to have people you can reach out to, and you got to have them on speed dial. And I don't think it's Teams. I think it's old school. Get me such and such. I need this. I've got a follow-up case. I got a flip room, and I just burnt through all these, and I need more. So I think the comms, the communication, knowing your lanes, and start to finish. Surgeon preference, what they need to clinical, that we can all support each other well. And I think moving through that, I think are huge. It's a continual learn, though. It never ends. It never ends. There's so much coming at us right now with change and everybody's trying to make it a little bit better, more efficient, more auto, more AI. And I think we have to be sensitive to that. And not only do we have to have the teamwork and the lanes, but we got to have the trust of everybody to agree on something to move forward. And that doesn't just stop with supply chain and the OR. Think about it, all the support services behind that, IT to make that happen, EVS to make that happen. They clean the rooms. I mean, you think about facilities, making sure new construction or a new cath lab wing that they got to put so they can hang in the closets just right. There's all these bits and pieces of all these support services that need to be a part of this as we move forward. So being at the table together, I think, is huge. Standing meetings that make sense.
So as we're bringing this conversation to a close, it always goes by incredibly quickly. If you ask me, too fast. But you mentioned AI, and that's actually been a big topic of conversation within different aspects of just medical care in general. So when we think about new technology, things that are poised to hopefully make the healthcare system and the way we provide care better, how do you see technology, or what technologies are out there even, that could help with the collaboration between the OR and supply chain?
Inventory controls is huge. I feel like on the sister station we have a podcast on AI like every other week, and it changes. It's moving at a volume that is breaking the speed of light, and something comes out, something new comes out. But I think that everybody gets so nervous about AI replacing jobs, and I think that's something we have to talk about too. I think it opens up opportunities for healthcare to be strategic. I think that if we can take some of the necessary inventory controls that help support the core, if you will, in the OR, that it pulls and it automatically shows a decrement, like in a hotel room when sometimes you pull the water off and you automatically get billed, or you pull a candy bar off the shelf and it automatically bills your room. I mean,
crazy how it knows
that's been there
things.
Forever, right?
Yeah.
That's been there forever. But as AI takes that even 100 step further and evolves the next 2 or 3 years, I hope that healthcare will catch up. It feels like we're decades behind. And I believe that, mission, taking care of patients always will change things. And we always have to think about that. But I think AI is going to evolve in the next 2 years. And Melanie will play this back and we'll look at it and we'll go, oh my gosh, look what's changed already since we last talked. And I'm just grabbing gears. I'm trying to get on the overdrive at 75 miles an hour, just keep up, because there is so many different pieces of this coming in. But inventory controls, I think, are huge. I think there's some purchasing pieces that are really huge that are coming into play. And it's creating that engineering component of less steps, more lean, move forward. Here's a project where we spend way too much time, too much labor, where we could be taking care of patients. We could have better turns, less OR time, better supply chain inventories that are being evaluated as we speak. And I think those are going to evolve at a pace that we're not going to be able to keep up with. But I think it's going to evaluate us to get to better strategic planning, which I feel like we're reactive a lot. And I hope that we can get more proactive on better opportunities with AI as we move forward.
We are in this crux of technologies moving very quickly. We see it coming into the operating room. We see it coming into our hospitals. And of course, we're scared. Like, how's it going to affect patient care? How's it going to affect our jobs? Is it going to be as smart as it is touted to be, or is it going to make mistakes? All these things. But there are really proven ways that technology can help us with our efficiency, with our lean processes and everything else, and things that we should embrace so that we can make it better, that we can streamline care, and that we can provide better care by having better information. And technology helps us grasp that information and use it to continue to improve. So as we wrap this conversation up, I always like to give the mic back to the guest, let you wrap it up for us. So any other final thoughts you have on this Operation Collaboration, as we talk this season about the collaboration between all the different departments, and obviously focusing this time on supply chain? What you got?
Melanie, I would just hit it again, and Hayes and Justin have heard me say it 1,000 times, but I really believe it from my heart of hearts. It's about mission. It's about the patient. It's about what's written on the wall behind you when you walk in the hospital, what our mission and values are, and it's taking care of patient first. And if we can always relay that and come back to, I'm addressing something very serious with supply chain, where supply chain is addressing something very serious with nurses and clinical perspectives, and the mission is always about the patient, best outcome, we can never lose. I was taught a very, very long time ago by a sister that said, I told her, I remember the conversation she had told me, and then we had sat down, and I told her I had saved X amount of dollars in a quarter. And she's like, great, Gary, I'd love to visit with you this afternoon. So I went visit with her, and she's like, it's great, Gary. Tell me about mission. Tell me about the patient. She goes, I know you're young and you're learning and you're growing, but I'm going to give you some advice. And it was the best advice I'd ever heard. And I was saving money. I was doing good things. And she said, you put mission first, the finances will always follow. You'll save
That's
money.
Good.
It was huge. And I gives me goosebumps to this day. Sister Pat, she said a long time ago, and I've always focused on that. And people get on board and they support it, and you have good outcomes, and you have good negotiations, you have good perspectives moving forward, and never forget about mission, period. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. That was a perfect start to our season. That was Gary Skinner, owner and partner with Discover S3 Consulting and co-host of one of our sister podcasts, Power Supply. I think this was the perfect conversation to kick off this season. I think most of us can still remember the supply chain issues of COVID and of the more recent Hurricane Helene that devastated North Carolina and affected our irrigation fluid supply. And this conversation highlights the fact that supply chain really is the undercurrent for every product that we have in use in the operating room. And understanding that relationship with supply chain is critical to having a successful department. And as Gary reiterated time and time again, being able to successfully complete our mission each and every day. And that's to provide safe surgical care for each and every one of our patients. That is going to do it for this week's episode. Stay tuned next week as we travel to radiology. We see them every day in our operating rooms, but we're only a small part of everything the radiology department is doing. So join us next week to learn more. On behalf of Chris, myself, and our whole team, thanks for listening to this season premiere episode of First Case.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of First Case. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to First Case on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for First Case in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@firstcasemedia.com. We look forward to hearing from you.